Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing 3 cards that I've made for the Around the World in 8 Weeks competition over at Mystical Scrapbooks. This week's challenge is from Russia, and the challenge is to use curves, distressing, and the item from the optional kit is flares. An entry in the competition can be a set of 3 cards or a scrapbooking layout. So we'll start with this card. I used my scan and cut to cut the base of this card. I also used it to cut the mat that will go on the front of the card using this Be Arty Recharge from the Fine Paradise paper range. So I created a file that is a 5-inch square card with a curved front edge, and I used my scan and cut, as I said, to cut that out. I also created cut a piece of pattern paper to use as a mat on that front piece. I'm going to use my scoreboard to score in 5 inches from the straight end. This will be the centre of my card. One of the requirements for the competition is to use distressing, so I'm going to ink the edges of all of my pattern papers, giving it that distressed look. Okay, I'm starting to think about embellishing my card now, so I cut a piece of white cardstock that's 5 inches tall. It was actually an offcut, so I just left it at the width that it was. It's about 1 3/8 inches wide. I also trimmed down a piece of the pattern paper that was an offcut from cutting out my curved piece, and I trimmed that down to 1 1/4 inches by 5 inches. I'm going to ink around the edge of both of these and layer the pattern paper on top of the white cardstock. Now that I've got the basics for the card, I'm inking around the outside edge of the card front. Then I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach the pattern paper to the front of the card and attach the pattern paper to that white strip that I cut a minute ago. To give my panel a bit of extra height, I added a few chipboard scraps to the back of it. Okay, time to start embellishing. I've cut a piece of cheesecloth, or some people say muslin, and I'm just going to crinkle that up and attach it to the front of my card. I've got my hot glue gun all hot and ready to go, so I'm going to use that to attach the bulky items on this card front. Once I've got that in place, I'm going to use a piece of the turquoise spotty ribbon. I'm going to cut a piece of that off, sort of pleat or just sort of gather that up a little bit, and attach that on top of the cheesecloth, just for a bit of extra colour and a bit more depth and interest. I'm going to have these poking out from the side of the panel I made with the pattern paper, so now I'm going to attach that panel, and with the chipboard attached to the back of it, gives it that bit of extra height. I had a fossick around in my stash and I found these 2 flowers, one pink one, one white one. I'm going to twist the stem around my pokey tool, make it into sort of like a little squirrely thing, and then attach them to the front of the card. You can see here I'm just having a bit of a play around where I'm going to place things. I've got these uniquely creative flowers that I'm going to see if I like them in there or not. I do end up using one of the small white ones. I had some gold and green and cream skeletal leaves in my stash that I thought I might have a try with those as well, but I didn't end up using those. I went with the die cut leaves that you can see. So eventually I worked out that I was going to have the 3 flowers in there, so the large white, the large pink and a small white one from the Uniquely Creative pack, and the 2 skeletal leaves. There is an optional kit available, and in that kit are these flares. There's 3 flares, and one of the challenges for the competition is to use those flares in this particular week. So I'm going to attach one of those flares under my pink flower. It's got a map of the world on it. It's got quite a few world icons around the map of the world, and I'm going to sort of make this card so that it could be like a happy holiday or a bon voyage or something like that card. The greeting on the front of my card is going to come from this pack of Memory Maze chipboard. It's called Card Sentiments 2, and I'm going to paint that with some acrylic paint. The name of that is Deep Turquoise. So it says best wishes, so I thought that this could be used for a variety of occasions. So I'm going to give my chipboard a coat of the paint. While I had that paint on my palette, I thought I would add some splatters to the front of this card. So I watered the paint down slightly with some water, then used my fan brush to splatter here and there just on the front cover. I was not keen on the brown centres of the white and pink flowers, so I fossicked around and I found 2 large clear gems that were the right size for the centre of these flowers, and I attached those to them. I also attached a tiny clear gem to the small white flower at the top. Now that my chipboard is dry, I'm going to use my art glitter glue to attach that to the card front. So there we have our first curved card for today. On to our second card for today. I didn't see this as a card, I saw it used as a pocket in a journal, but I thought it could make a good card. So I used my scan and cut once again, and I cut 4 5-inch circles out of this pattern paper. This is a cocoa vanilla paper, Daydream, and the name of this particular paper is Sweet Serenity. I want to fold my circles in half, so I'm scoring them at 2.5 inches. Now I'm going to use this cutting mat to do the next piece because I need to line the circles up and make sure they're straight. So I lay the first one on the mat so that it's running level with one of those lines, and then I lay the second circle on top of it, use a pencil and mark where that needs to go. Now I'm not butting right up to the edge, I'm slightly off the edge and slightly above the top of the first circle. I'm going to use my art glitter glue and attach that circle so that it lines up with that line I drew. Once again, I'm trying to make sure I'm using the lines on my cutting mat to make sure that I get this nice and square. I'm going to repeat this same procedure for the other 2 pieces. So when you're looking at the bottom section of your card base, or where all of the cards are sort of overlapping each other, you'll find that one side's up, one side's down. So on each circle you've got half of the circle up and half of the circle down. So remember that when you come to this bottom piece, so you have to tuck one under and lay one on top. For the inside section of the card where we're going to put our personal greeting, I'm cutting a piece of this Be Arty Find Paradise paper. This particular one is called Recharge, and I'm using the pink section from that. I'm going to cut that so that it's 5 inches square. I'll ink the edges of that pink paper with my black Versacolor ink cube, and then attach it to the inside of the card using my art glitter glue. As a closure and a bit of a decoration on the card, I'm going to use this 5/8 of an inch satin ribbon, and I'm going to apply a row of 1/2 inch tape along the back of my card, and then I'm going to attach the ribbon to that so that it doesn't slide around. Once again, I'm going to distress the edges of my curved sections on the front of my card using my black ink cube. The sentiment for this card is coming from that same Memory Maze chipboard pack called Card Sentiments 2. It says Happy Birthday. I'm going to ink all over it with my Versamark Embossing ink, and then I'm going to heat emboss it with some gold embossing powder. I wanted to make a little cluster to put my greeting on, so I had a look in my Uniquely Creative Gums and Roses creative cuts, and I found a spotty circle and a pink ticket shape. So I inked around the edges of both of those and used my glue to attach those to the front of my card. So I'm attaching them to the bottom flap on the left hand side. Once they were in place, I used the same glue to attach my greeting. So that's the second card. So you have the 4 edges that fold in, one on top of the other so that they alternate, and the last one that comes in has to be sort of tucked in under. Then we've got our ribbon to seal it all up, tie it up nice and neatly, and also give us that nice bow for the front of our card. There isn't much embellishment needed for this card because of the style of the whole thing. So now we have our third card with curves. For this one, I'm making a side folding horizontal card, I guess you'd say. Yeah, landscape card. I'm just cutting an A4 sheet of cardstock in half down the middle. I'll also cut a panel of the same white cardstock so that it's slightly smaller. So my card base measures 5 7/8 by 4 1/4, and the panel that I cut is 5 5/8 by 4 inches. To add a bit of interest to the panel, I'm going to use this Ultimate Crafts embossing folder. It's called Shooting Raindrops, and emboss that panel. While I was at my big shop, I used my Spellbinder Standard Circle Small, 3 of them. One's about 3 inches, one's about 2.5 inches, and one's about 2 inches in diameter. And I cut that from 3 of the different sections of that same pattern paper that I used on the previous card, the BRT Find Paradise Recharge is the name of the paper. So I cut one from 3 different sections of that paper. I'm now going to cut each of those circles in half. Once again, I'm going to use my black Versacolor black ink cube and distress the edges of both the background panel and the circles. I had a piece of the pink left over from the previous card, you know, the pink that we put in the inside centre. So that's the BRT Find Paradise Recharge. And so I trimmed that down so that it was 5 inches by 7/8 of an inch. I inked around the edge of that, and then I stuck it onto a piece of white cardstock and then cut around that so that I had a fine border all around the pink of white, and about a 1/16 of an inch all around. Time now to attach my circles to the front panel. I'm going to use my T-ruler so that I can try and endeavour to get them straight. So I'm going to attach the largest one first, then the middle-sized one so that it lines up on the right hand edge, and then the smaller one so that that lines up on the right hand edge as well, so that they all line up on the right hand edge and the circle is showing each of the pattern papers on the left hand edge. I'm going to do the top and bottom at the same time so that there is a gap between the two, and this will be covered by that pink panel that we created earlier. I'm going to attach some scrap chipboard pieces to the back of that pink panel before I attach it to my card front. To embellish this front panel, I'm going to use some Craft paper blooms. These are called fairy floss. One of those. I'm going to twist that little squirrely bit around my poker tool, paper piercer, and then I'm going to attach that to my layout. I'm also going to use a die to cut the word celebrate out of the dark coloured pattern paper that I used in the circles, and I'm going to attach the pink brad just sort of tucked under the flower and just alongside of the word celebrate. All of these are going to be attached to the front panel on that pink strip using art glitter glue. Once everything's in place there, I then attach the front panel to the card base, so this card will open from left to right. So that's all of my cards for today. I'd love it if you'd pop over to Mystical Scrapbooks and check out their challenge. This week we're in Russia, as I said before, and I will put a link in the description box below. Thank you for watching my video. If you're not already a subscriber, I'd love it if you would subscribe, and I hope you can join me for my next video. Thanks for being here.